Welcome into an NFL Week 8 edition of the RotoWire Sports Gambling Pod. Nick Whalen, John McKechnie here with you as we are every week to break down each game on the NFL slate. And John, we've survived by apocalypse. We had 6 teams off last week. It was brutal. It felt barren. It felt like we were being shortchanged. 3 fewer games than normal, but 0 bye weeks in Week 8. Everybody is back in action. Our goal for the next hour: help you make some money. Help you decide if you're trying to lean one way or the other on some of these games. A lot of tough lines out there. We'll talk through. We'll give you our leans. We'll hand out some props that we like. We'll give you our favorite parlays, teasers, best bets of the week at the end of the pod. So make sure you stick around for that. John, let's begin with Thursday Night Football. And, as usual, we're recording this late Thursday afternoon. So if you're not watching live, chances are this game is in progress or has already happened. But we'll give some brief thoughts on Buccaneers-Bills, and then we will move on to the Sunday slate. John, I know you're looking at the Bucs here as a potential underdog spot.
I am. That's a lot of points to trust with the Bills in general right now. And then the fact that it's also a Thursday nighter, even if the Bills are a little bit healthier at key spots, I think that is just too much right now. I think that there are some concerns with the Buccaneers in their secondary. So I'm looking for Stephon Diggs to have a nice night. So I'd be interested in his prop. I think last I saw was 87.5. I'm pretty sure that we're looking pretty good on the over there. I do like the under on Dalton Kincaid with the 41.5 yards. I know a lot of people are expecting him to go over that. I'm sure that's going to be a popular prop with Dawson Knox being out, but consider me a doubter for now. And I think if there's a strength in the Buccaneers secondary, it is at the safety spots, and also their linebackers are good in coverage. But beyond that, I think that the Bills without Tre'Davious White can be thrown on. I think the Bucs can't run, so they're going to throw a lot. They're going to test that secondary. So I think the Bucs will find a way to stay within this number.
Yeah, I like that Stephon Diggs call. I mean, coming off of 58 yards last week against New England. Prior to that, had 4 straight 100-yard games, also went over 100, I should say, in week 1 against the Jets. So I think he gets back on track. After Diggs has one of those games, there's usually some barking, there's some disappointment, there's some disagreements on the bench, and almost always, he comes back strong the next game. So that's a good call there. All right, let's focus our attention on the Sunday slate, John. If you're listening, you have a few days to ruminate, to decide where you want to allocate your funds for this week. And we'll be going chronologically down the fantastic odds comparison page over at rotowire.com. Texans-Panthers, John, 2 teams coming off of a week 7 bye. This line has moved a little bit in favor of the Houston Texans. They are on the road. Texans 3.5-point favorites against the Panthers. 43.5 is the total. New play caller in place for Carolina. I don't think the Panthers are as bad as their record may indicate. These teams that almost make it halfway to the season without a win, it's like typically those are like some of the worst teams that you can remember, over a given period. I don't really view the Panthers in that light. They've had some bad breaks. The offense has stalled out just about every week. My question to you, are the Panthers a live dog here?
The way you're framing it, I feel like you got some interest on the Panthers side of this.
Maybe at home.
At home, coming off the bye, they're both coming off the bye, like you said. But I don't know. I've just been a Texans believer all season, all off season, and I think that this is an interesting spot. Obviously, you get some fun storylines like the number 1 overall pick versus the number 2 overall pick. Are the Panthers having some buyer's remorse? Maybe at this exact moment they are, perhaps. But beyond that, I just feel like that the Panthers offense is so monochromatic. Like it's basically, is Adam Thielen picking up a first down, or are they going 3 and out? Like it's so like kind of easy to predict. And maybe the new play caller will be able to kind of mix things up a little bit, make things a little bit more difficult on the Texans defense. But I think this Texans offense is primed to be in a good spot here. Even if it's at that tricky number 3.5, I do like the Texans, but I'm not quite strong enough on it to include it on our card. But I am interested in the fact that your kind of snap judgment was on the Panthers.
At 3.5, that's kind of what gets me. Like I don't think Carolina's that bad, and with Houston, I'm still struggling to fully buy in. CJ Stroud seems legit at this point, right? I don't think there's going to be necessarily some, hard adjustment to a rookie wall for him. Like I think he's just going to be a very good quarterback going forward, and should only get better as the season goes along. But in terms of just when you stack up the talent on both of these sides, like I don't think Houston is like a dramatically better team. I think 3.5 is just a little too much for me, and I think coming out of the bye, this could be a spot where Carolina not only covers but maybe gets its first win of the season. At the very least, I think this is going to be competitive. So I don't feel strongly enough to include it. Putting an 0-6 team on our Circa card this week just would not feel right, especially after the atrocities that we committed last week. But I'm with you. I have some interest in the Panthers, but not quite enough to include it there. Good note from the Action Network, by the way. Preseason Texans were an underdog in this game. Obviously, they are now favored. Teams in those situations since 2019, 42-81 ATS and 6-9 ATS this season. So a trend to keep an eye on there. Let's move on to the LA Rams and the Dallas Cowboys. This game feels like it should be in the late window, doesn't it? Like Rams-Cowboys just screams like 3:25 start to me for some reason. And yet it is in the early window. It's in Dallas. We're in Central Time. Cowboys 6-point favorites at the DraftKings Sportsbook. You'll see some 6.5s elsewhere. I know FanDuel, BetMGM have it at 6.5 right now. Is this, John, a potential underdog play for you? I know you have some interest in the Rams.
I do. I think the Rams are a solid team. I'm not necessarily expecting them to make the postseason or anything in the current NFC climate, but I think that they are a tough out. I think that 6 to 6.5 points is a little bit of disrespect. I think that there's maybe a little bit of just the public loves betting on the Cowboys at play here, and that's why we see a number this inflated. I know the Cowboys have the rest advantage coming off the bye. Rams obviously coming off a disappointing loss at home to the Steelers, but I think that they match up well. I think that, no Trevon Diggs on the Cowboys side. I think that Matthew Stafford should be in line for one of his bigger days of the season. They'll need to button up the turnovers. They're going to need to keep him upright, of course, but nice little homecoming game for one Matthew Stafford from Highland Park, Texas. And I feel like, that's right. Him and Clayton Kershaw, did you know that they used to hang out? But beyond that,
we're not doing that.
Oh yeah, I got Jake Fromm ones. I got a million of them.
No. Stay focused.
All right, we're cutting them off. But bottom line here, I think that in addition to the Rams being able to push the Cowboys defense, I think that the Cowboys offense is in a bit of a weird spot right now, and I'm not sure that the bye week alone is enough to fix that. So I know the Rams don't have a great defense on paper, but even still, I think the way that Dak Prescott is playing right now, very mistake prone. This could kind of get a little bit hairy for the Cowboys. So I do like the Rams to cover this one on the road.
Yeah, I'm with you, John. I'm with you. This is too big of a number for me. I still respect the Rams. I do have questions about how that offensive line is going to hold up against Dallas. They're one of the best pressure rate teams in the NFL. You look at some of the PFF numbers; they continue to slide on a weekly basis for that Rams offensive line. So that's a concern. If Matthew Stafford is sacked 4, 5, 6 times in this game, then I don't think the Rams are winning. But if they can keep him relatively protected, I actually like the Rams' chances here. I think you got 2 receivers to exploit, what's been a pretty shaky Dallas secondary. And to me, it feels like the general vibe with the Cowboys was, all right, they won that game against the Chargers. They're kind of back now. They're rolling again, going into the bye. It's like, what does it mean if you beat the 2-4 LA Chargers? Like everybody can beat the Chargers.
That's right. They can, and they often do. So I put very little stock into beating the Chargers, who had no real home field advantage beyond Chargers girl. So that doesn't really hold a whole lot of water for me. So I think the Rams might be the liveliest dog this week, in fact. Okay,
we like it. We're in agreement on the Rams. Let's move on to Vikings-Packers, NFC North battle. This line has been all over the place. The look ahead back in August was Vikings -1. At one point, it was Packers -2.5. It is now, kind of flipped back the other way to Minnesota -1.5. And from my perspective, John, that makes sense. I am struggling to find reasons to buy in on this Green Bay Packers team right now. It's like if you can't get a bye and go to Denver, the worst defense in the NFL, one of the worst defenses historically that we've seen in a very long time, and you once again come out flat for the 4th game in a row. Green Bay has scored 6 total points in its last 4 first halves. That's 8 total quarters with 6 points. You just can't keep living like that. And I know that the offense is, woken up to some degree in the second half of those games, and they've been competitive. But man, it feels like Jordan Love, just kind of decision making has not been there. The deep throws have been disastrous. I think he's like 6 of 27 throwing further than 20 yards down the field. He's got a bunch of picks in those scenarios too. I'm not even that high on the Vikings. I don't think the Vikings are good. I think they pulled off somewhat of a fluky win the other night against the 49ers. You get 3 turnovers in that game. You have one that probably should have been a turnover, turns into a touchdown. To me, that was somewhat of a false final. And I think if those teams play 10 times, the Vikings probably lose 8 or 9. But I'm struggling to find a reason to buy in on Green Bay here, other than, hey, they're at home at Lambeau Field, and I don't know if that's good enough.
Right. I feel like I'm buying high on the Vikings. Leading into the last couple of weeks, it's been like, the Vikings are trash. They are who we thought they were all along last year, but Kirk Cousins is playing at an extremely high level, even without Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison has like officially arrived. I know that there's some injuries in that Packers secondary. So I think that, even if it feels a little fishy to be buying back in on the Vikings at this stage, I think the Packers are really in a tough spot, even with the fact that they are at home. So I will go with the Vikings here, but I am stopping just shy of saying that we need to include it on the card.
I'll think about that one. That's one that I might try to sell you on. You mentioned the injuries in the Green Bay secondary. Both Darnell Savage and Eric Stokes going on IR this week. That is brutal. Jair Alexander was back at practice, but he was limited earlier this week. Didn't play last week. Obviously, if he's back, that changes things for Green Bay, especially in that matchup versus Jordan Addison. But you have to think that even if he does play, he'd be limited. We'll see. Devondre Campbell could potentially get back for this game. Kind of the same situation as Alexander, where if he plays, you do wonder, what percentage he's at. And then most importantly for Green Bay, Aaron Jones limited again at Thursday's practice. We saw him on the field against Denver. And part of the reason that I was actually pretty in on Green Bay last week, we thankfully did not include them in Circa, but I had a pretty high in my pick'em league. I thought that was a very winnable bounce back spot for Green Bay. And Aaron Jones played 21 snaps. Like that tells me that there's still something up with him. Like they had a drive to potentially go down and win the game late in the fourth quarter, and Aaron Jones wasn't out there for a single play.
Right. That's very, very telling. And then, the practice report, you can always kind of pick up on the trajectory in which a player is trending through following along Wednesday through Friday. And that does not sound great. And as we've established for many weeks on this podcast, AJ Dillon is not it. So
he's not him. He's out of him.
Far from it. No, not even close. So if there's no Jones, and this Packers receiving core has like a litany of kind of like interesting players, but it doesn't feel like one that you can bank on week to week, whether it's Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, you name it. But it's like sometimes they can click, sometimes they just sort of disappear. Dan Orlovsky was kind of making some interesting points on Pardon My Take yesterday about the Packers offense just kind of not being as inventive this year. And it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg, right? Because you obviously can't do the same things with Jordan Love that you could with Aaron Rodgers, but also Jordan Love needs to hold up his end of the bargain a little bit better. So not only is this Packers offense a little stagnant and predictable, but you also are getting subpar quarterback play. So give me the Vikings.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you there, man. I also like the under on 42 for this game. Vikings have just one over on the year thus far. And, obviously we don't really expect a whole lot out of the Green Bay offense at this point. Speaking of bad offense, the New Orleans Saints, John, are on the road at the Indianapolis Colts. Saints favored by 1. Total is sitting at 44. This has been an interesting one to track. Kind of holding with what the look ahead was. That was 1.5. It's kind of been bouncing between 1 and 1.5 the last couple of days. Really, really tough one for me. I mean, Saints games in general, I feel like every week I'm just puzzled when we get to the New Orleans Saints.
Me too. Whether it was the Patriots game, the game against the Jaguars last week, I mean, the list goes on. Like the Saints are impossible to figure out. They are the team that I least like to bet on either side, because I feel like I have no real pulse on them. Carr obviously was mistake prone last week, and that just like that game against the Texans and the one against the Jaguars, set up in a position where they could win the game, and there's some kind of boneheaded play calling, and all of a sudden, or maybe some hero ball on Carr's part. Although Foster Moreau did drop that touchdown last week, to be fair, but Carr seems to be not the cleanest fit with the Saints so far. We're going to have to see some more mixing and matching. I'm not saying that it's going to be Jameis time, but I think we could see Taysom Hill take over a little bit. And Taysom Hill is a weapon. Everyone hates him for fantasy purposes. He's annoying. He steals red zone carries. He really is. But watching him with like no fantasy interest, like I like watching this guy play. He can do pretty much everything. He can make catches in traffic. He bowls people over. It's pretty fun. So all that being said, you go on the other side. Gardner Minshew, historically really bad against the spread. This is a close one. I know obviously that Indianapolis covered last week in one of the more, kind of aberrational games of the entire season against the Browns, hanging 38 on that defense. I don't even know if any team will come close to that the rest of the season on Cleveland. So all of this to say, I'm fading the Indianapolis Colts coming off of a good performance. I think that comes back to earth. I think the Saints defense is good enough for them to go in there and get the road victory.
Yeah, this is another under that I like at 44. I think we do see some regression. That was just an all-time weird game, Colts Browns last week. I think you're right. I don't think the Browns, they might go the rest of the year not allowing 30 points to anybody. Thankfully, they don't have to face Minshew again, but that was just, big plays, fluky plays, broken coverages all over the place. It was just a weird game from the start, wire to wire. So I think we kind of throw that out to some degree. Gardner Minshew quietly riding a 2-game, 4-turnover streak. We'll see if he can keep that up this week. It's so tough. I don't have really a lean here. I actually would probably just, take the home team, take the points with the Colts. I don't really trust New Orleans. They got booed off the field in the first quarter last Thursday against Jacksonville. Like something just seems a little bit wrong internally there. Like I don't know if they're putting up with or picking up what Derek Carr is putting down. There's a lot of frustration. It's 3rd and 8. He's throwing short of the sticks, and Alvin Kamara just looks lost. Chris Olave looks like he's done with Derek Carr. So I don't think there's a lot of positive momentum coming out of the New Orleans side. And outside of that 34-0 beatdown of the Patriots a couple of weeks ago, New Orleans has beaten the Panthers by 3. They've beaten the Titans by 1. Squeaked out both of those. And in their other games, they've scored 16, 20. 17, 9, 13, and 24. It's just this offense just can't really get it going against anybody but the New England Patriots. So I don't really trust either offense here. I think my favorite play would be the under on that total of 44. Let's go to New England and Miami. Fun game here. A lot more fun based on what we saw last week from New England. This looked like a potential train wreck spot for the Patriots had they not shown up last week against Buffalo, but starting to feel a little bit better about New England. I don't know that I'm quite ready to buy in. I think the vast majority of the sample this season would tell us that New England is not a very good team and, could be in some major trouble here. They always struggle at Miami. Even when New England was the best team in the league for a while, it felt like this was always the trip up spot every year. So I'm not super optimistic on the Pats here. I know you feel a little bit better about them covering. And part of that is you got some key players banged up on the Dolphins side.
Yes, we do. It looked like Tyreek was back at practice this week. That's the big thing because I think they could survive without Mostert. But Tyreek, if he was to be out or limited, I think would really kind of change the entire structure of this Miami offense in such a way that all of a sudden they'd be out of sorts. I think New England played them reasonably tough in that Sunday nighter earlier on in the season. And, they did play well last week in that win over Buffalo. No one was expecting that. They were 9.5-point underdogs in that one, I believe, and won that one outright. To your point, New England under Belichick tends to struggle down in Miami. But, if you're looking at those spread numbers, there were oftentimes, Patriots favored by a lot. So this is the shoe's on the other foot here. You're trusting the Dolphins with 10 points. I know it's not a great side on New England, but I think if New England can kind of control the clock and maintain possession, run the ball against a kind of soft Miami defense, maybe that will be enough to kind of keep Miami off the field. I think Miami wins this one, but it's more like a touchdown game. So with that in mind, 2.5 points of value for the Patriots. I do like New England here.
Mac Jones 1-11 ATS as a dog since the start of last season. I think we know where that one win came less than a week ago. He is 5-0 ATS against the Jets. That's good. All of those coming against Zach Wilson. 11-22-1 ATS against all other quarterbacks. He has also never beat the Dolphins against the spread. So I don't know. I still lean Miami here. Like, as long as Tyreek Hill's in, as long as Jalen Waddle is in, as long as Raheem Mostert is in, I think this is a bounce back spot for Miami. They've taken care of business against all the average to below average teams. And I think they're going to carry season long questions about, all right, can they show up against the Buffaloes and Cincinnati's and Kansas City's and Phillies of the world. But I think they've already proven pretty definitively that when they have the speed advantage, when they have the schematic advantage, they're going to take advantage of that. Mac Jones also 1 of 14 straight up when the opponent scores more than 24 points. So I see your logic as this being, maybe a 7-point game. I could get on board with that. I certainly don't see New England, pulling the upset 2 weeks in a row, because I think Miami's scoring more than 24 points here.
That's a very good point. So the New England is not built for a track meet. And that could be coming their way with all the injuries on their defense. Last time that they played, they had both Matthew Judon and Christian Gonzalez. Not the case this time around, but I'm sticking to my guns here. I'm going with New England to hang on. It's going to be sweaty, and you can anytime that you're betting against Miami, you could see it going so south because they are so explosive. But
literally, yeah.
In this case, I will hold my nose and take the points.
I will say, I'm looking at the weather for Miami on Sunday, and at noon, chance of rain. It says showers, according to our good friends at weather.com. 17-mile-per-hour winds. So maybe not exactly the hot and steamy Miami environment that you would typically picture. All right, John. Before we move on, it's football season at Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. We love Circa. We go there every year for the annual RotoWire trip. We're playing in the Circa Million contest this year. Make sure you check out our picks. You can find those on YouTube and Twitter each week. Circa has the best pool in history, John, and it's called Stadium Swim. 3 levels, 6 pools, a 143-foot diagonal screen. Circa Swim is America's favorite place to watch football. They play every game, college, pros. You can watch the World Series there next week. You can catch all the action poolside from a variety of seating options, including everything from cozy daybeds to private temperature-controlled cabanas. Even the cabanas have TVs in them. You could watch literally anything you want. Stadium Swim. It's located at Circa Resort and Casino, and it's open 365 days a year, all sports, all seasons. Book your stay today at circalasvegas.com. That is circalasvegas.com. All right, Jets-Giants. The Battle of New York, John. Jets are 2.5-point favorites. They are technically on the road, although this plays as more of a neutral site game. It should be a pretty even split, you would think, between Jets and Giants fans. 36.5 is our total. And I will tell you, John, that is not the lowest on the board. And we'll get to that game in a little bit here. But 36.5, somehow the second lowest total of the week. What are you seeing here?
I just don't see a reason to like the Giants here. I know that they've played a little bit better over the last couple of weeks. Got the win against Washington last week, and obviously we're a couple of boneheaded plays away from pulling the upset in Buffalo. But Jets well rested. Breece Hall running extremely well, going to be fresh in this spot. And I think that the big problem here is that this is a really bad matchup for the Giants offensive line. Almost any defensive line could control the line of scrimmage against the Giants. But when you're talking about the Jets, you might be talking about the best one in football. So that's going to be, it could be a really long day. I think if Saquon Barkley is unable to get going, which would likely be the case in that scenario, then the Giants are just going to be relying on Zach Wilson turnovers. And certainly you can't rule those out. Mm-hmm. But those are flukier plays. So I think that the safer bet is to just take the underdog, or I'm sorry, the favorite in this one. You're given 2.5. That's not too much to ask, I don't think, of the Jets, especially if the Jets defense holds the Giants under 10 points, which is kind of what I'm envisioning here.
Yeah, I'm struggling to find reasons to back the Giants as well. I do think they actually dominated that game last week against Washington a little bit more than the score would indicate. Had a drive stall out, deep in Washington territory due to a fumble. So there's a couple things, when it gets them, but for the most part, they were able to control that one from start to finish. Does look like it's going to be Tyrod Taylor again at quarterback. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing though for the Giants. You look at him compared to Daniel Jones. I mean, he's 15th in EPA per play with Tyrod Taylor. They're 33rd in EPA per play with Daniel Jones, or at least he ranks 33rd among quarterbacks. Depth of target has increased significantly under Tyrod Taylor. So both guys are equally mobile. I don't know. Maybe there's a little noise in that sample. Obviously, it's only 2 games. The Giants have played their best 2 games of the year with Tyrod Taylor, but something to keep in mind there. Another good stat from the Action Network here, and unfortunately this goes against the Jets. Underdogs in games with a total below 42 this season, John, are 23-8-1 ATS. So that would fit the Giants, that would fit the Cleveland Browns, that would fit the Tennessee Titans on this week's slate. I say it every week, but the Action Network puts out awesome betting notes, pretty much everything you could need all in one spot. So go check that out. With all that said, I still feel like the Jets are the side here. Coming out of the bye, you got more time to prepare. I think this improvement that we've seen from the Giants, like it's somewhat real because I don't think they were as bad as they were, the first few games of the year. Like they were just awful, right? And it's like, all right, we know that there's a better team in there, but they're still really banged up. Even Saquon Barkley's still on the injury report. Waller's banged up. We know about the offensive line. So I'm not saying that the Jets are going to win this in a romp, but I'd still feel pretty comfortable with the Jets, especially at 2.
Yeah, 2.5 for sure. I like the number. We're only have to cover a field goal. I do like the Jets here, although that is a great nugget about underdogs in these low total slugfests.
Next game on the slate, another noon game: Jacksonville and Pittsburgh. Jaguars 2.5-point favorites at the Steelers. Jags looking for 5 in a row. They have a bye in Week 9, a much needed bye. I mean, they've played. Last week, I should say, against the Saints. That was their 4th game in 19 days. Getting a little extra rest here coming in after playing on Thursday. Total is sitting at 41. Interesting line here, though. I mean, the look ahead when this first opened was Pittsburgh -1. I was up to as high as Jags -3 earlier this week. Has now settled at 2.5. This is just screaming stay away to me.
Yep, same here, because I can't have a coherent thought on the Steelers. It's impossible, but you do always seem to trust them when they are an underdog, and they're an underdog at home in this spot. So Jags obviously going to be well rested, of course, everything like that. So, but just if you were just looking at this with no gambling knowledge whatsoever, you definitely like the Jags here. But there's just something about this Steelers team. They ugly things up for the opponent just enough. And I thought Kenny Pickett looked okay last week. I mean, you just get the ball to George Pickens and Deontay Johnson, and usually decent things will happen, if not good things. And, going up against this Jags defense, I don't think that Pittsburgh will be able to run much, but I think that they will be able to sustain enough drives to stay in this one, potentially get the win. This is very tricky. I think it's the hardest game on the board other than maybe the Saints game. So I'm staying out on this one. But if I had to pick a side, I'm going with the home dog.
Yeah, even trying to set my Jaguars bias aside, I have a winner in Pick'em this week. I don't know. I feel like the schedule is going to catch up to the Jags at some point. I actually thought it might last week, and it did. The Saints rallied back, had a chance to tie that game or potentially win it late, and obviously the Jags defense ended up holding. But I do think at some point Jacksonville is going to get tripped up, and if it wasn't last week, this might be the spot. We always recite the Mike Tomlin underdog stats in a situation like this. 57-31-4 as a dog in his career, 18-5-3 ATS as a home underdog. So I like the Steelers here. Whatever devil magic they have going on, like I still refuse to believe this is a good team. But I do think getting Deontay Johnson back helps, right? And he actually was added to the injury report today, so that is something to monitor. Looked like he tweaked his hamstring at some point this week. If he doesn't play, that maybe changes things as far as this Pittsburgh passing game. But I think Jacksonville's going to struggle to run the ball. I think the narrative in the fantasy world has been, oh man, the Jags, they're running the ball so well. ETN, he's a top 3 running back on the year. It's all touchdowns, right? Like you take away, he's basically putting up like 2 touchdowns a game over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Like the yardage has not been good. The EPA per play has been terrible. Like they're 30th in rushing EPA on the year. So I think there's a little bit of a disconnect there as far as, to what degree this Jags offense is really rolling. So I like the spot for the Steelers, and I could see them winning this game outright at home.
Yep, I could as well. That's interesting stuff on the ETN front. It does feel like it's either a nice touchdown for him or he's just getting bottled up right at the line.
Yeah. The yardage has just really not been there. We had the explosive game against Buffalo, but other than that, the 3 games, during this winning streak, he's at 55, 55, 53 yards, and the workload has been there each week. All right, let's move on to. Oh boy, I teased it earlier, John. The total's at 35. Falcons at the Tennessee Titans, and the Atlanta Falcons, for some reason, John, are 3-point favorites on the road. We're talking to Jest here a little bit. I understand it. The Titans are expected to start Will Levis. They are insisting that we will see Malik Willis as well. Maybe they have some, kind of designed plays for Malik Willis, but I think we see mostly Will Levis, and I am I am intrigued. I think, banged up Ryan Tannehill versus Will Levis in his first NFL game. Like how big of a downgrade is that for you?
Well, I look forward to the designed Malik Willis delay of game.
Sack.
What are they doing? But we got a little master versus grasshopper here with Vrabel going up against Arthur Smith. Yep. But I think the Falcons are solid. I hate giving points on the road and trusting the Falcons with points, and the Titans. They're all over the map. They can have a game like the one against the Bengals, but they can also have a game like the one against the Browns. So anything is possible with these guys, and who knows? I mean, there's heating up trade rumors that this could be like the last time that we see Derrick Henry in a Titans uniform. I think they should also be actively looking to offload DeAndre Hopkins. That never made sense to me in the first place, but I like the Falcons here. I think Bijan obviously gets a lot more involved this week, and Ritter probably not going to have the 3 red zone turnovers this time, at least probably not. The Titans just sent off Kevin Byard, one of their most important pieces in the back end of that defense. So, this could be a really nice spot for Kyle Pitts. And, when you really are just like, you got to make a choice here. Will Levis I don't think he's going to have immediate success. I'm not completely writing him off because he is toolsy, but first game against a good defense, even if it is at home, I think we could see some disastrous type of plays from Levis. So give me the Falcons.
Yeah, the Falcons defense being a top 10 unit, I think has gone a little bit undercovered. And I think that's the reason that they're sitting where they're sitting right now. I mean, the offense has been extremely unpredictable, extremely turnover prone, but the defense has continued to step up throughout this season. I talked about the Jags being kind of fraudulent on the ground. Like, so is Atlanta, right? You think of them as this running team. They got a quarterback who can run. They got 2 running backs who they're comfortable using. I mean, they're down to 27th in rushing EPA on the year. So it's still the backbone of that offense. But, more often than not, the last few weeks, they've had to put the ball in Desmond Ritter's hands. And, that's given us varied results, to say the least. So in my picks article this week, John, I kind of split the difference. I took Tennessee to cover, but I took the Falcons to win. This feels to be like a 19-17 type of game.
So according to the over/under, that's a shootout.
That would be, yeah. We'd be just flying over that total. But that's enough talk about this game. I mean, we just don't know. We don't know when it comes to Will Levis, and if he could come in and even just game manage, I don't think you're asking Will Levis to step in and win you this game. But if he could just not turn the ball over and make a few throws here and there, then I think Tennessee can absolutely hang around here at home. It's still a little bit jarring to see the Falcons, get given 3 points on the road.
Levis, but to your point there, like, I don't feel like it's in Levis's DNA to be game manager. Like, you watch him his entire time at Kentucky when he was a starter, like, he was going for broke pretty much every time he drops back. So, like, unless the Titans have been able to alter that mentality for him, like, I feel like Levis is just gonna overamp himself into some dumb stuff on Sunday.
All right. Falcons it is then. And I guess if I'm saying it's going to be 19-17, then I love the over on 35. Let's get into the late window. Oh, wait, no, excuse me. This is not a late window game. This is our final noon game. Eagles-Commanders. We're seeing the Eagles as 7-point favorites at DraftKings. That's a number across the board. You could maybe find some 6.5s earlier this week, but holding at 7 now. I like the Eagles here, and it's dangerous. 7 is not a number that you typically want to bet. I totally get that. But I think Washington had its chance to beat the Eagles earlier this year. They lost that game in overtime. That was just a clunky performance by the Philadelphia Eagles. It feels to me like they're getting back on track. The one thing that has not been on track for them is the turnovers. They've turned it over 7 times in the last 3 games. They forced only 1 turnover in that 3-game stretch. So if they can cut back on the turnovers, even if you just turn it over once, even if you don't have a tipped pick 6 that just hands your opponent 7 points, I think we feel pretty good about the Eagles here. And, Washington, to me, they have been the most unpredictable team week to week. And that's saying a lot because there's like 10 teams that fit that bill. But, some weeks they're cruising to 30 points. They're whipping the ball all over the place. Other weeks they are scoring 7 points against the New York Giants. So I can't put my faith in Washington right now. Sam Howell has been sacked at least 5 times in 5 straight games, including that Eagles game earlier this year. I think this is a big smash spot for the Philadelphia defensive line. I think it's a smash spot for the Eagles offensive line, get that running game going. I know Washington is to some degree had the Eagles number as much as any team has in that division over the last couple of years. They seem to play these close games, seemingly for no reason. But I'm leaning Philly here pretty hard.
I am too. I think that Washington's kind of in shambles. I thought their performance last week against the Giants was abysmal. And yeah, they already took their best swing at Philly on the road back in week 3, I want to say. So this time around, I think that the Eagles know what the best punches and combos are that Washington can throw their way. And I think Philly will be ready for them. I think that defensive line is going to eat. I think Sam Howell, as much as I like watching him play, holds onto the ball way too long. That's a huge red flag going up against this Philadelphia front seven that even got my guy Nolan Smith going last week. Yep. So dogs everywhere on that Eagles defense. I like the Eagles to win this one, and it's going to, I don't know. I wonder if we're going to hear some Ron Rivera hot seat talk after this one.
I think we may. John. I saw a stat. You're talking about Sam Howell hanging on to the ball. Last week he threw the ball away on 13% of his dropbacks, which 13% doesn't seem that high. That's very high. Like normally it's like 4 or 5% for most quarterbacks. Like it's just their whole offense is. It's like, all right, if we can't run the ball, and look, I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball on Philly. No. It's just all right. Just got to run around and see what you can do. And more often than not, that's just not going to be successful. He was just 3 off the record for most time sacked through 7 games. He's got 40 sacks so far this season. David Carr, of course, with the Texans in 2002 holds that record, but he made a run at it.
Yeah, so we'll see if we can catch back up this week. I think Philadelphia could help to that end.
All right, now we are officially into the late window. We have 4 games on the late slate this Sunday. Browns-Seahawks. Kind of a sneaky fun game here, John. I'm intrigued by all 4 of these late window games. Seahawks up to 4-point favorites at home. Browns, it's going to be PJ Walker again. He's actually already signed to the active roster. Big step for him. We'll see on Deshaun Watson. Man, that's a conversation for another day as far as if or when he ever gets back to looking remotely like himself. We have some other injuries that we're keeping an eye on. Kareem Hunt was back at practice on Thursday. That's a good sign for his availability. Not expecting Jerome Ford to be available for the Browns. Could see some Pierre Strong in that backfield. David Njoku also back on the practice field. He's dealing with a knee injury, but both of those guys seem to be moving in the right direction. I have some interest here in the Browns as a live dog, John. And part of that stems from what we talked about, back with the Colts earlier in the show. I think the Browns defense rebounds here. I think, going into last week, I saw some talk about they were saying oh, we don't have a nickname yet. We're waiting for the fans to give us a nickname. It's like, well, you're not getting a nickname if you're letting Gardner Minshew turn the ball over 4 times and still put up 30 points on you. 38 points, I should say. I think they rebounded a big way here. Seattle's the better team, no question. I'm actually still in on Seattle. They've had some weird games the last couple of weeks. Absolutely should have won that Bengals game 2 weeks ago. Last week it won and covered against the Cardinals, but still wasn't as convincing as you would like. Arizona did not play well in that game, and Seattle had 2 bad turnovers back to back. In the second half that made that a little bit tighter than it was. So I think Seattle wins this game, but I could see it being a 3-pointer where you get the win with Seattle, but the cover with Cleveland.
Yeah, I like Cleveland here as well. I think, going back to that Bengals game for Seattle, what kind of stopped them from making that comeback? It was the offensive line letting down against a very good Cincinnati pass rush. Now, Cleveland's is even better. And Myles Garrett is playing out of his freaking mind right now. So I think that the defense does lock back in this week. And, there's been, Kenneth Walker, I think, popped up on the injury report.
As well.
Yep. So that's an important detail for Seattle. I think they need to be balanced to be at their best. And if the Browns are able to key in on one thing, and that's Geno Smith dropbacks, I think that we could be in for kind of a long day. I know that Seattle should be getting DK Metcalf back. Not that it mattered because Jake Bobo was so sick last week, but regardless, I do view the Browns as a very live dog in this spot as well. I love that they're getting 3.5.
Yeah, and like I said, it's up to 4 at some books, so you're getting even a little more cushion there if you like the Browns. Tyler Lockett did not practice yesterday. We'll see what his status is. Same with Noah Fant. Their starting center Evan Brown missed last week. No real firm update on him, but they could be down an offensive lineman or 2. And I think that point holds up that you made about they're basically the reason that they lost to Cincinnati was that they could not handle that pressure, whether it was resulting in sacks or throwaways or rush throws. And I think if you're having that trouble against the Cincinnati Bengals, you're absolutely going to have it against Myles Garrett and this Browns team. So I'm not quite going as far as to say I think Cleveland goes on the road with PJ Walker and wins this game, but I think we get a very competitive game, and would not be surprised if it's a 2 or 3 point spread. Total, by the way, is 38. So we mentioned those you want to be targeting those underdogs with these low totals. Browns fit that mold this week. Let's go to your team, John, the Baltimore Ravens. They are 9.5 point favorites. That is tied with the Bills for the biggest favorite of the week. They get the Arizona Cardinals. They're on the road. 44.5 is our total. Any reason to think of this as a potential trap spot for Baltimore, John, coming off of that just dominating win over Detroit last week?
Well, it's a very public play. It looks like about 89% of the action is coming in on Baltimore covering this one. But public has, for the most part, been right this year. Last weekend, notwithstanding.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about last week.
No, it's gone. But the Ravens, I think they really found some impressive rhythm and the Todd Monken philosophy. I think started to like really manifest itself against Detroit. Obviously, they're going to get up for that game, and maybe you're concerned that a cross country trip to play a bad team would be enough to kind of take away some of that motivation. But I think that the Ravens know that they need to build on that game, and I think that they really do end up taking care of business. I just think man-to-man, personnel-wise, I don't see the Cardinals' defense being able to keep a lid on this Ravens offense if it's clicking in any sort of form as it was a week ago. And then the Ravens, Roquan Smith was not practicing yesterday, was back today. That's huge. So that's a defense that I think is really going to hold Arizona to, I think you're topping out for Arizona at like 17 points on Sunday. So I think the Ravens should be able to get to 30 in this spot. I like the Ravens.
Yeah, I'm right in line with you, John. It's always going to be a little bit nerve-wracking. I know when I wrote my article yesterday, the number was 8, and it's moved to 1.5, which we don't love. But Arizona's just shown a lot of slippage on both sides of the ball, and especially the defense. I mean, they're down to 30th in defensive EPA, 5.7 yards per play. They're allowing opponents to score on 46.5% of their offensive drives. And they started the season 3-0 ATS. They've now failed to cover 4 times in a row, and I tend to think that continues here. We should mention, by the way, that Kyler Murray. We had some news earlier today on him and his impending return at some point off the injury report as of Thursday. Still technically on the reserve PUP list. Like I don't think the expectation is that he plays, but still kind of odd that they would make that decision now.
It would be a wild move for Arizona to throw him back into the Wolves in this spot. But, I don't put anything past Arizona. But to your point on them, starting out hot against the spread and coming back to earth, to quote the late great Dennis Green, they are who we thought they were.
They sure are, John. And oftentimes you see that, when a team with the talent that the Cardinals has starts the way they did, you're like, all right, something's going to regress here. And yeah, we've seen it. And, again, last week, I thought Seattle played like a C+ game. Still won by 10, still covered, and I think Baltimore could do the same. All right, that brings us to Chiefs-Broncos. Second time in 3 weeks, John, that we're getting a Chiefs-Broncos matchup. This one is in Denver. Chiefs, 7-point road favorites, total up at 46. Interesting number. It's kind of like Commanders-Eagles to me in some ways, where obviously the Chiefs have been the vastly better team. They win straight up every single time. And yet the Broncos, the last couple of years, have been able to find ways to keep these games close. They played a couple one-score games last year. Even a couple weeks ago, that was a game where the Chiefs didn't even get to 20 points.
Barely covered.
Right, barely covered. I mean, just an ugly cover, a dirty cover, some would say. I'm hard-pressed to believe that Denver has snapped its finger and suddenly become a better defense. I think a lot of it last week was just playing against a horrible offense in Green Bay. But they've made some progress, right? They haven't allowed 70 points in like 5 weeks now. So there's that.
Pretty good.
But tough number here at 7. I kind of blindly lean Chiefs, especially after how that offense looked last week. But again, it's the LA Chargers. I don't really know how to judge that team. Can Denver hang tough again here at home?
I'm saying no, but I'm not strong enough on it to say that we need to include the Chiefs on the ticket this week. I do think the Chiefs get this done, but it is a little bit unsettling that this is on the road. You got to cover by more than a touchdown. that's enough for me to stay off of it. I think that, the Eagles comparison is a very good one. But I'm much more confident in the Eagles getting it done this week than I am the Chiefs.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, part of me, kind of by that same logic, I feel like Denver had their chance a couple of weeks ago. It's like, what are the odds that they keep this Kansas City offense under wraps for the second time in 3 weeks? I would say not great, but yeah, at 7, it's probably a pass for me. Let's move on. Bengals 49ers, the final game in the late window. We got Bears Chargers and Raiders Lions still to come. But we'll close out the Sunday afternoon slate here. 49ers down to 3.5-point favorites. We'll get into that in a moment. Total is 43.5. Bengals coming off a bye here, John. When this number sat at 5.5 earlier in the week and we thought Brock Purdy was playing, all over it. Now Brock Purdy's out. We're losing 2 points of value, but in steps Sam Darnold. I don't know that there's going to be a massive fall off, especially without Purdy's played the last couple of weeks. Obviously, you kind of get the Shanahan bump for Sam Darnold. But as long as this number's staying above 3, which it is, I'm inclined to ride Cincinnati here.
I am too. And the lines over at Circa have locked, and we've got the Bengals at 3.5. So that's more than that field goal cushion. Love that. I think that the Bengals are, they're coming off a bye. They're a team that needed its bye when it came, right? Because, that T. Higgins been banged up, Joe Burrow, maybe outside of the Cardinals game, hasn't fully looked himself just yet. So getting the week off to rest that calf, I think was really important for them. And they go out to, I know San Francisco's lost a couple weeks in a row. So people are kind of starting to ask questions and so on. But, and I get that. But I still view the Niners as probably the best team in football. The Chiefs right there with them. But I do like the Bengals in this spot, especially with the spread. And frankly, if the Bengals play their A game, I think they win this one outright.
Oh yeah, no question. I think if the Bengals look like last year's Bengals coming out of the bye and Burrow's fully healthy and T. Higgins is back and he's not dropping balls, then I think this is absolutely a spot where I could see Cincinnati winning this game. I mean, like I said, even when we thought it was going to be Purdy at 5.5, I'm like, that was going to be one of my easiest picks of the week. At 3.5, I have a little bit more pause, but I think Cincinnati, you also got to keep pace in your own division, right? And I think that's part of the case for Baltimore this week too. Is like you can't afford slip ups here. You can't, especially Cincinnati, the way they started the year. It's like every team in the AFC North feels like it's winning every single week. Like you need these games, and it's easier said than done when you're playing on the road at San Francisco. On the other side, it's like it's kind of inconceivable to me to think that San Francisco, based on how we thought of them a couple weeks ago, could just lose 3 games in a row straight up. Like that's a little bit backwards, but you're on to Sam Darnold. You're going to be without Deebo Samuel again. There's some other injuries on both sides for San Francisco. So I like the Bengals here, and I think the bye week advantage in the belief that we're going to see a better version of Burrow and a better version of T. Higgins is ultimately what pushes it over for me.
Exactly. So this is, I mean, I think this might be the game of the weekend. I'm really excited to see, how this one unfolds. It's too bad about Purdy, but Darnold probably not the biggest drop off in the world. So I think we're going to see a really good game here, really closely contested. I think it probably comes down to a field goal, and therefore do like the Bengals still.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if this is a blowout one way or the other. So I think that's one way to look at it as well. Sunday Night Football, John. We are blessed with the Chicago Bears in primetime yet again. They're at the LA Chargers, a pair of 2-win teams. Chargers 8.5-point favorites. 46.5 is our total. What do we do here? I don't know if I can trust the Chargers against anybody, even at home against the Bears, as more than a touchdown favorite.
Nope, can't do it. I hate the Chargers in this spot. The Chargers make me very upset every single week, seemingly. The Bears, they figured some things out. Obviously, they're playing against a quarterback situation that is going to be a lot tougher this week. But I can't say that with any level of confidence that the Chargers won't find a way to self-implode or self-destruct in their own right. So I think that the Bears defense has played better over these last few weeks generally. Going back to the Washington game, the Vikings, they held to under 20 points, and obviously that was their first game without Justin Jefferson, but point stands. I think this is a Bears defense is coming together just enough, and I think that if the Bears just kind of have a very vanilla game plan for Tyson Bagent and just go heavy on that run game again. I think that's a recipe to stay within the number here. And I'd be lying if I'd say I wouldn't be shocked if the Bears won this one. But at the same time, it's like with the Chargers, is it really that much of a slam dunk?
Nothing's a slam dunk with the Chargers, man. And if they lose this game straight up, Staley's out. I think we can say that. What worries me about the Bears is, yes, the defense is better than you think, but it's almost entirely the run defense that's carrying that right now. They're 10th right now in EPA against the run, which is really good. But the Chargers can't really run on anybody, so I don't know if that really changes things. And the Bears are 31st against the pass. So
concerning.
Right. And, the Chargers run defense has been better. Like by Charger standards, it's been fantastic. They're like 19th in the league, which is, not good. But again, they're usually in the bottom 5. The Chargers are 30th against the pass. So they're just as bad as Chicago. So if it turns into like, all right, neither team's going to be able to run. They're both going to be throwing the ball. Who do I trust more? I trust Justin Herbert, obviously, more than I do Tyson Bagent. So like that's what worries me. Like the way that the Bears were able to stay in against Minnesota, win that game last week against the Raiders was running the ball, not asking Tyson Bagent to really do anything other than make some open throws. I think if you're asking him to do more than that, this could be trouble. So while acknowledging that the Chargers will definitely find a way to charge this up, and it could totally be a 7-point game. I see it, but I could also see this kind of being all right, it's Tyson Bagent. He is who we thought he was, that type of game for the Chicago Bears.
Right. And therefore I cannot include this one on the tape. No. It's just there too many variables at play. Like I do have that latent concern, like you said, that the other shoe drops when it comes to Tyson Bagent. Do you really expect him to go another week without turning the ball over? No, I don't. So that's definitely concerning. But in my heart of hearts, I cannot trust the Chargers with this many points. But about 60% of the people are saying that the Bears hang in here.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah, Bears are 29th in pressure rate. They're dead last in sack rate too. It's like that's part of the recipe, right? It's like you got to get after Justin Herbert. You got to make him uncomfortable. You got to make him force throws. And I just don't think the Bears do that. I think we see a pretty productive offense for the Chargers. And if LA is getting to 28, 31, 34 points in this game, it's like at what point does Chicago kind of drop off? Like I don't see them keeping up if it turns into a shootout.
No chance under that setup. So the Bears are absolutely going to have to play their game. And, if you're backing the Bears here, you're just hoping that Brandon Staley's incompetence is damaging, and Eberflus's incompetence just is kind of baseline normal, like not really helping, but not really hurting either.
All right, let's finish out with Raiders-Lions. Monday Night Football, another banger here in primetime, John. Jeff and I every week on the radio show, we're just like, just railing against these scheduling decisions. But look, I'm going to watch it. We can complain all we want. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to watch every single minute of both of these games. Oh, yeah. The Detroit Lions are 8-point favorites at home. 46 is our total. This is setting up as like the bounce back of all bounce back spots for Detroit.
I think so as well. I think last week is concerning for the Lions going forward when they play good teams, but not really against the Raiders. And they're at home. They're not going to slip up twice in a row. They're not going to get beaten badly twice in a row. Obviously, they're giving a lot of points here, but I think they get there. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to be a huge problem for this Raiders secondary. I think Jahmyr Gibbs kind of having his arrival last week is another, kind of multifaceted addition to this offense. If they're able to get anything out of Jameson Williams, that's just icing on the cake. And then, I think that this is a Raiders offense that is really stuck in the mud. I mean, the fact that they couldn't run whatsoever last week was concerning. The quarterback situation is up in the air to say the least. So this is just a bad spot for the Raiders, and I expect this one to get rather ugly. I like the Lions here, even in spite of last week.
Yeah, still some concerns, about like if David Montgomery doesn't play, which I don't think he's trending toward right now. Didn't practice today. Obviously, they're kind of a day behind everybody else playing on Monday, but I don't think Montgomery's going to be out there. And when they've played their best games, it's been David Montgomery as the battering ram, kind of leading the way. So that's what gives me just a little bit of pause with Detroit. But I don't, the Raiders to me are kind of like the Packers, and they beat the Packers. So maybe we feel better about them. But it's like, man, you're just scratching and clawing to try to find anything positive there. And Jimmy G coming back, if that indeed happens, I think it's a boost, but it's not really enough to change my opinion here. And I think Detroit's the type of team that rallies behind a loss like that, right? I mean, they're absolutely disgusted with how they played in Baltimore, and I think coming back home facing the Raiders, 2 weeks on the road, tough scheduling spot for Detroit. I think this is a really, really, really good spot for the Lions, especially on a bit of a longer week to prep for the Raiders. So I'm with you there. I'll take Detroit with the points. All right, John, that brings us to the fun part of the pod. Let's talk a little Survivor. And, we always try to issue a like a warning at this point. Like we don't know who you have left. We can't tell you play this team because it's different for everybody. But you got a lot of fairly obvious options this week.
You do. There's some big spreads on the board. You could start out and get it out of the way potentially Thursday night with the Bills going up against the Bucs. I'm not quite there though, but I view that the Lions, as we were just talking about, and the Ravens are kind of like the obvious top two. The Dolphins certainly under consideration. Because I like the Patriots against the spread, I will recuse myself from that one. But I think the Fins are definitely a solid option. I use them against the Panthers. I feel like most people have probably used the Dolphins at this point, but if they're still available and they're your best option, I think that's the direction that you go in. And then beyond that, a couple of divisional favorites, that we kind of lumped together. That's the Eagles and the Chiefs in their respective matchups. And then my sicko one would be the Jets. Although after talking about it a little bit more with you, I feel less good about that.
Well, we'll see. We'll see, man. I think the Jets get it done. And look, if you're putting them in the sicko tier, I think you know what you're signing up for, right? That's right. All bets are off if you're going with the sicko tier. And look, I think taking the Bears or the Raiders last week was absolutely sicko tier material.
It was, and I got completely flambéed for it. But that's the game you play, like you said.
Yeah. Let's go to parlays of the week, John. I'll start this week. I'm pairing the Jets money line, the Minnesota Vikings money line, and we're taking the Rams, one of our favorite dogs, +6 against Dallas. That gets you to +496 at DraftKings.
Ooh, okay. I like that. That checks out to me across the board. Definitely on the Rams. They are actually included in mine. So mine is a money line parlay. I'm swinging for the fences a little bit more. Usually I'm doing 3 -110 bets. That gets you about 6-1. This one pays out +937. Be the Rams money line, Bengals also money line, and then the Lions to kind of pad it. Lions money line. That gives you +937 odds.
Ooh, we like that. All right, a couple of dog money lines there. Good stuff, John. All right, the teaser of the week. We're going with a 7-pointer here. We are teasing the Baltimore Ravens from 9.5 down to 2.5. We're teasing the Chiefs from 7 down to even. They just got to win against the Denver Broncos, which they have done 16 times in a row. And we are teasing the Detroit Lions down from 8 to -1. So Baltimore, 2.5. Chiefs, just straight up win. Lions got to win by at least 2 against the Las Vegas Raiders. That gets you to +130. And John, that brings us to the crescendo of the podcast. Your best bet for NFL Week 8.
Give me the Rams against the spread. So I know for the parlay purposes, we're chasing a big number there, but playing a little bit safer with the best bet. But I do like the road underdog to cover this one. I am shook on Dallas. I can't quite get there with them, and I think that the Rams are better than what this line implies. So give me LA.
Okay. I'm going the complete opposite direction, John. I'm taking one of the biggest favorites on the board. I'm totally copping out, but I'm going with the Lions.
It's been working for you all year.
It's too good of a spot. Yeah, I'm a coward. Say what it is, but I'm going with the Lions. I think coming back home, playing on Monday night, that place is going to be fired up. They're going to be looking to bounce back. The Raiders feel kind of dead in the water to me. They're like a worse version of the Saints, where you just kind of feel like nobody on this team really believes that they're moving in the right direction. Like we're overdue for another Devontae Adams. Like, yeah, this team's pretty bad. It's not really what I expected type of press conference. Should be getting that in the next week or two. So we're rolling with the Detroit Lions at -8, and you are taking the Rams to cover against the Dallas Cowboys. That'll do it for us. We want to thank our sponsor, Circa. Make sure to check out circalasvegas.com. You can book your stay at Circa. Check out Stadium Swim. They're open 365 days a year. Again, that's circalasvegas.com. Best of luck to everybody betting Week 8 in the NFL. We thank everyone who joined us live on Twitter, live on YouTube. You can, of course, find us wherever you get your podcasts. We will be back next week. John, good luck, man.
Cheers.